The impeachment is over. The U.S. Senate votes to acquit President Donald Trump. Palestinians protest the murder of a 17-year-old at the hands of Israeli forces. And a plane split in two after a rough landing in Turkey. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. The United States Senate has acquitted President Donald Trump on both impeachment charges, bringing the historic and a bitter impeachment fight to an end. The first charge was abuse of power, accusing the president of withholding U.S. military aid from Ukraine to pressure its leaders to investigate his Democratic rivals. The vote was 52-48, with only one Republican senator, Mitt Romney, joining Democrats in their guilty votes. The second article, accusing the president of obstruction of Congress, fell by 53-47. Venezuela has strongly rejected the remarks made by U.S. President Donald Trump in his State of the Union address, where he promised to bring down the Bolivarian government of President Nicolás Maduro. The Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza read a statement from the Venezuelan government.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela strongly rejects and condemns before the international community the gross interventionist comments made by Donald Trump in his speech to the U.S. Congress, which are an interference in our domestic affairs. In an agonizing attempt to revive the failed strategy of regime change by force, following a pre-prepared script and in the middle of an electoral show, Trump used lies, chauvinism, and supremacist remarks to offend and disrespect the Venezuelan people and made violent threats against their integrity and against the constitutional, legitimate, and democratic government of President Nicolás Maduro.
In his State of the Union speech on Tuesday night, President Trump talked of restoring U.S. leaderships around the world. He gave as an example his backing for the opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó, who was in the gallery as Trump spoke.
We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro.
The Cuban government also provided a timely response to Trump's address. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said that if President Trump wants to support the Cuban people, he would have to lift the genocidal blockade, resume the forbidden flight, and grant visas to Cubans. Rodriguez added that Trump should reestablish U.S. citizens' freedom to travel to Cuba. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is beginning a mini tour of Latin America that includes visits to Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela. His first stop is in Santiago de Cuba to meet with Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, the two of whom have met numerous times recently and share a close diplomatic relationship. From there, Lavrov will go to meet with Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard in Mexico City, and on Friday, he will be meeting with President Nicolás Maduro in Caracas to discuss deepening cooperation in energy, mining, transport, agriculture, and defense. Haitian nationals living in Venezuela have rallied outside their country's embassy in Caracas against President Jovenel Moïse's decision to join the coup-mongering Lima group. The protesters say it is regrettable that their government has chosen to join the U.S.-led group that is working to undermine Venezuela's peace and solidarity. Moïse's decision came as the Caribbean nation is facing one of the worst political, economic, and social crises in its recent history. Nationwide protests calling for the president's resignation have rocked the country for more than 1 year.
For the Haitian people, it is a historical aberration that President Jovenel Moïse has decided to take Haiti into the Lima group. The close relationship between Haiti and Venezuela stretches way back in history. We are deeply pained by the behavior of this president. When we remember that the Lima group has one sole purpose, which is to damage the Venezuelan economy and the Venezuelan people. President Moïse is an illegitimate leader, as has been shown in the streets of Haiti over recent months. His government is rejected by all sectors of Haitian society, And we know he's doing this just because he got the order from Washington.
Moving on, in Bolivia, 8 candidates have registered to run in May 3rd's presidential election. 7 of them will face off against the Movement Towards Socialism party, hoping that, together with the government, a right-wing party or alliance can block the MAS from winning the ballot.
With the closing of the registration for candidates in the May election, parties which participated in the November 10th coup are now dismissing concerns about the political persecution which only one of the 8 competitors face, the Movement Towards Socialism.
This is a democratic electoral challenge between adversaries, not between political enemies. The people will decide at the ballot which will be the best option.
Over the weekend, Evo Morales' power of attorney, Mrs. Patricia Hermosa, was arrested, and the documents with which she was to inscribe Morales as Legislative Assembly candidate were taken. A judge ordered that she be held in preventive detention for 6 months. The Supreme Electoral Court also prefers to look the other way.
The electoral organ is conducting a clean electoral process, a transparent electoral process, and we are making an appeal to all actors so that they situate themselves within the rules, within the laws, and that we all work to carry out the electoral process.
In this election, they are once again saying all against the mass. In this case, all are parties which played a hand in the execution of the coup. They have set April 3rd as a date, 1 month before the vote, for the possibility of uniting the 7 right-wing candidates. They hope to be favored in the polls in order to stay in the presidential race.
On that date, we will take into account the statistics of the government, and also each party is going to have its own statistics. With that, we are going to start to compare, and with that, we all need to enter into this knowing that if not one, then maybe 2 parties will remain to fight against communism.
Meanwhile, the Movement Towards Socialism has opted to internationally denounce the harassment and political persecution taking place within the country.
We are denouncing the harassment that our main delegate is experiencing at the Supreme Electoral Court. It's one more shame under this de facto government, which doesn't want us to participate in the elections, which will continue to have a hostile attitude towards the MAS IPSP, or social movement leaders and former officials of the government.
As soon as the designation of Luis Arce as candidate of the MAS was made known, Arce was immediately included as accused in a judicial case which was opened 4 years ago. Now, with the proliferation of cases of political and judicial persecution, the United Nations has sent experts in electoral processes and human rights defense to Bolivia.
The famed and highly acclaimed Barbadian poet Edward Kamau Brathwaite passed away at the age of 89 on Tuesday. Kamau was known as one of the godfathers of modern Caribbean literature. He also conceptualized Creole identity, a predominantly Afrocentric theory drawing on the majority of African heritage of Caribbean people. Prime Minister Mia Mottley described Kamau as easily one of the titans of post-colonial literature and the arts. His death leaves novelist George as the sole surviving Barbadian contributor to post-war Caribbean English literature. Jamaica's Prime Minister has instructed police to take action against anyone preventing the Ministry of Health's dengue eradication drive.
And you don't have any right to block, deter, or harm a public officer doing the public's work. And Minister of Health, and I'm saying to the Commissioner of Police and the police officers who are here, we must enforce the laws very strongly on this matter. Because it is not in the public's interest for someone in their private yard to be breeding mosquitoes. And when you come to talk to them, they tell you, you can't come in my yard and you can't tell me what to do about this. That can't work. And in fact, the public health law gives the right to the public health officer to enter your premises and take action if you are having breeding sites. And I'm saying to the Minister and to the police, we have to enforce this law.
Moving on, human rights and feminist organizations in Ecuador have condemned the recent sexist remarks made by President Lenín Moreno. They say that he mocked victims of sexual abuse while at the same time he has cut spending on programs to prevent gender violence.
During a meeting with business people in the city of Guayaquil, President Lenín Moreno decided to broach the subject of harassment and sexual abuse, and his comments were widely condemned.
As men are under permanent threat of being accused of harassment. And I see that many times when women denounce harassment, it's true and it's fine that they do. But sometimes I see that they pick on ugly men. They call it harassment when it comes from an ugly person. But if the person is handsome, according to conventional standards, they don't necessarily think it's harassment.
But he didn't stop there. The president went on to say,
and at my age of 66, it wouldn't be just harassment, it will be sexual abuse.
Reactions to the president's questionable statements were swift.
The sad thing is the message was sent not just to Ecuadorian society. We shouldn't be known internationally for the distasteful comments made by our highest authority. He is saying that women in Ecuador shouldn't be taken seriously, and that harassment is nothing but an issue of physical appearance. I hope he rectifies his comments and learns from the backlash.
Women's organizations responded immediately, rejecting the president's declarations and calling attention to the situation of women in the country.
The latest figures on gender violence are higher than those recorded in years prior. 60 out of 100 women had been victims of gender-based violence in 2011, and now the last figures say 65 out of 100 women are victims. His words show he doesn't know the reality of women. We have a very high number of femicides, with close to 700 cases in 2014.
President Moreno eventually apologized for his comments through social media, but for various sectors, he still shows no empathy for such a sensitive topic. His comments also came after severe budget cuts for teen pregnancy prevention and for prevention against gender-based violence.
We'll be right back. Stay with Welcome back to From the South. A 17-year-old Palestinian boy was killed by Israeli troops early on Wednesday in the occupied West Bank. The teenager was shot and killed in the city of Hebron during a protest against U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called Middle East peace plan. The boy has become the first person to be killed during the widespread protests condemning the deal. In Tunisia, hundreds marched in the capital Tunis against U.S. and Israeli deal, referring to it as an agreement of shame. Protesters have also called for a boycott on U.S. products.
This agreement is a great betrayal. It is a lesson for the treacherous Arab states. Today, they want to sell Jerusalem, and tomorrow, they will sell the holy places. We are telling them that they are educated, cultured, and rebellious Arab youths in every corner of the world, and they will certainly turn against you. It is from the youth that you derive your legitimacy.
Yemen's indigenous leaders in the Hamdan region have also protested Trump's contentious plan. The protesters waved their weapons in the air and performed traditional dances denouncing the plan and its attacks on the Palestinian people. As they say, it is biased in favor of Israel's continued illegal occupation of Palestinian territories.
We, the tribesmen of Hamdan, came here today to deliver a message to the aggression agents, to the U.S., Israel, and the rulers of the Gulf region. We are totally rejecting the deal of the century. We will only allow this over our dead bodies.
We are here gathering and sacrificing our money, children, and everything we have to reject the deal of the century. We are ready and well prepared to head to the front lines and even beyond the front lines, to the U.S., Israel, and Tel Aviv.
And Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has pledged his country's support for the Palestinian people. Speaking at a public seminar on Wednesday, he called on all Muslim nations to unite against the so-called peace deal.
The American plot of the deal of the century will die before Trump dies. I believe this plan is stupid, a sign of viciousness, and has been detrimental to them since day one.
Lesotho's First Lady, Maisia Tabane, has been officially charged for orchestrating the murder of her husband's former wife, Lipolilo. She is accused of masterminding the gunning down of Lipolilo outside her home in 2017. Her arrest and subsequent charge comes a day after her return to Lesotho from South Africa, where she had reportedly been in hiding. She is expected to apply for bail, but police have already made it clear that they will oppose it because she has already fled the country once. Algeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs has visited Libya as part of his country's efforts to facilitate peace. The Algerian official held a meeting with the Libyan Prime Minister at his offices in Benghazi before meeting with representatives of Libyan tribes. Algeria had indicated earlier that it is advocating for homegrown solutions to the Libyan conflict and is against foreign intervention.
Algeria hopes that Libyans can get together and solve their problems in security, the economy, and in oil. With the support from Algeria and support from all the neighboring countries, God willing, and this is the reason for my presence today.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. One person has died after a plane carrying 183 passengers skidded off the runway at Turkey's second largest airport, splitting into two after landing in rough weather on Wednesday. The aircraft flew into Istanbul's Sabiha Gökçen Airport from the Aegean city of Izmir in very wet weather. Video broadcast on Turkish television showed several people climbing through a large crack in the plane and escaping on one of the wings at the rear of the aircraft. Two avalanches have killed at least 38 people and left others buried in snow in Turkey's eastern Van region. The first avalanche buried a snow-clearing vehicle and a minibus, killing 5 people and leaving 2 others missing. The second avalanche struck as emergency workers were searching for the 2 missing victims. The region's governor confirmed the incident and said a rescue operation is underway for 20 workers who are still trapped.
8 people from gendarmerie units, 3 security guards, 1 firefighter and 9 civilians lost their lives unfortunately. May they rest in peace.
The director of the World Health Organization has accused some countries of withholding data on cases of the novel coronavirus, a situation he said will negatively affect the fight against the outbreak.
I call on all member states to share detailed information with WHO, including epidemiological, clinical severity, and the results of community studies and investigations. This is the responsibility of all countries under the international health regulations. Of the 176 cases reported outside China so far, WHO has received complete case report forms for only 38% of cases. Some high-income countries are well behind in sharing this vital data with WHO. I don't think it's because they lack capacity.
Chinese authorities say they won't allow the novel coronavirus outbreak to affect the country's economic development, adding that they are confident in the nation's capacity to resist both medically and financially.
China is fighting against a coronavirus epidemic that has so far killed hundreds of people, placing a spotlight on the world's second largest power as the international community and financial markets pay close attention to the impact on the country's economic development.
Let me emphasize that the coronavirus epidemic is a temporary one and won't change China's economic foundation, which is still expected to maintain fast growth. Many have made assumptions in light of the impact that the SARS epidemic had on the economy in 2003. But China's financial resources and emergency response capability have improved significantly since then. And as such, we are confident that we can prevent the spread of the virus and reduce its impact on the economy.
The government says China's economic reserves, the world's largest, provides a margin for authorities to implement stimulus measures that can mitigate the negative effects of the epidemic.
Judging from the information that we currently have, many foreign trading companies are quickly restoring their production capacity. All departments and local governments are also taking measures to help organizations reduce their losses while fighting the epidemic.
China has yet to reveal its growth goal for the year 2020, let it be adjusted given the current situation. But citizens remain confident that the economy will continue to grow, as it has done in years past.
The economy has been good even before these trying times, and it has the capacity to resist, and we know that this year will do better.
The coronavirus is not the only epidemic that China has faced in the last decade. It has had to overcome the serious acute respiratory syndrome SARS, H1N1, and the H7N9, among others. Today, the Chinese economy is 9 times larger than it was during the 2003 SARS epidemic. It's also more diversified and resilient.
Moving on, U.S. voters continue to anxiously await the results of Monday's Iowa Democratic Party caucus. The party blamed the delay on a coding issue in the new app used to tabulate the results. There were unexplained inconsistencies which led to heated conference calls and firm denials of hacking. In the absence of clear results, Democratic presidential hopefuls gave what appeared to be victory speeches to supporters, turning their attention towards the next nominating contest in New Hampshire. Candidate Bernie Sanders remains optimistic.
For some reason in Iowa, they're having a little bit of trouble counting votes. But I am confident that here in New Hampshire, I know they'll be able to count your votes on election night. And when you count those votes, I look forward to winning here in New Hampshire. So tomorrow, the votes may not be there to impeach Trump, but I am absolutely confident that in November, the votes will be there to defeat Donald Trump.
I think we need a strong Democratic candidate that can beat Trump, since Trump's likely to be the Republican candidate. And we saw what happened last time.
The Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez has met his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron on the last stop of his European tour. Fernandez is seeking the support of the European government for the renegotiation of Argentina's foreign debt, including $44 billion currently owed to the International Monetary Fund. The leaders of Italy, Germany, and Spain have already said they would back Argentina's move, and President Macron said France would do the same.
France will stand by your side and will be working alongside the International Monetary Fund and other partners to help Argentina return to the path of growth and sustainable debt. Your country's economic situation is, of course, a cause of concern and of action for us. We have always supported efforts to stabilize your economy and integrate it into the international financial community, and we will continue to do so.
Trayvon Martin, a Black American teenager who was fatally shot in February of 2012, should have turned 25 years old today. Martin was killed while he was walking home from a convenience store by so-called neighborhood vigilant and repeat offender George Zimmerman. What was referred to as a modern-day lynching brought renewed scrutiny to stand your ground gun laws and the role of the National Rifle Association in promoting gun culture throughout the country, coupled with the country's existing systematic racism. The killing and events which followed, including the murderer's acquittal, spurred the Black Lives Lives Matter movement. What began as online hashtags expanded to national demonstrations and actions like the Million Hoodie March, which were held in his honor. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.